Thank you so much for tuning into the Woman to Woman podcast, a conversation for women like you, smart, successful, curious, and interested in being your best self. Join both Sarah and I as we discuss topics that women our age are actually interested in, with both of us being candid and often having differing views.
As coaches, we sprinkle in advice and tips, along with humor and vulnerability. We hope you feel like a fly on the wall with two friends. Let's entertain and inform you and welcome you into our friendship.
We appreciate you pressing play and spending some time with us, wherever you are in the world.
Let the magic happen.
In this week's episode, we are talking again about unschooling with Cam. So we are just continuing our conversation because the conversation was so long, as this is a complete new concept for most of us. So we had a lot to understand, right? So here is the second part, and hope you're gonna enjoy this.
Can you tell me about your adult kids? Like, I want to hear about what they're doing, how, their relationships, how they are socially. Have any, how could they possibly handle going into corporate? Because my belief is that the school system is there, to either factorize or, they're making little robots essentially. Like, they're little factories and little corporations so that you understand the rules and you can just quite simply, go into that structure. So could they possibly go into corporate, because they have not been conditioned to?
I have no doubt that they could. None of them want to. My oldest son.
You think they could? You think they could?
Yes, especially my middle, my daughter. Absolutely. She's so savvy. She has such a sense of the world and herself and her place and where, what she is so aware of the conditioning and what she's unplugged from, for sure. My oldest son, I could do it, but just would never want to, ever, ever, ever. I could see my daughter wanting to at some level, right? My oldest son he ended up getting a degree in mathematics and started going to college actually really early. He started full time actually at 14. And so he had a college degree by the time he was 18. And he was like, I really love math and I'm good at it and it's art to me. And he had he was also an artist and he had he had an online art business and he was doing all sorts of amazing things and decided that wasn't what his heart was calling him to. And he's actually a model. That's what he does professionally now. He's like, I'm a mathematician, but my heart is to be a model. So he's a professional model. My daughter ended up traveling a couple of different paths. She is now almost 22. And my oldest son, by the way, is the one who was super, super shy. We thought he had social anxiety. He was exhibiting those behaviors, like having trouble ordering at restaurants, going and talking to people was starting to become hard. But once we deconditioned and once he tapped into who he was, it's funny because when I first opened Cambria, he worked for me and nobody would have guessed that ever. When I tell the story, they're like, you mean that person right there? Like, was that person that you're describing? There's no way. Like, I can't even believe it. Because he's tapped into who he is, and so it's so different. It's so different to see him. Nobody would have guessed it, but it was so true. And my parents, when we first started unschooling and homeschooling, we needed my parents' support because, we had jobs where we didn't have freedom and all the stuff to do it. Eventually we did. But my parents would have him come to their house and hang with him. And my parents can't believe it. They look at him now and they're like, oh my gosh, when you talk about transformation, this is the story you want to tell, because he went from being somebody who looked like it was going to be hard for him to even function in a social setting. And now he's a model. I mean, he stretches stuff. He's, it's amazing. And went to university and then chose that's not the path that I want to go. Got the degree, did all the things, was able to do it, and was like, yeah, that's not what I want. My daughter actually went a slightly different path. She started taking college classes, but she didn't enroll full time. She just started taking different things to explore when she was young. she's the example I always give of somebody who just didn't care what the grade was. She always ended up doing fine, but she was the first one who really showed me that when you decondition, it's just like you're there to learn what the professor has to teach you. And if it's not the right professor, you drop. It doesn't really matter when, you just drop it. And if it's somebody that you love, you just keep going and you take it. She's the one who really taught me that, because that's what she did. And she ended up, she got very interested in animal nutrition and veterinary science for a while. Thought she wanted to go into a traditional vet science path, but just, kind of knew intuitively that wasn't going to be it, but really got interested in animal nutrition and has since written a book on animal nutrition, and does a lot of work in proper feeding, primarily of canines and felines, of cats and dogs. But and then she actually works for my company now and does a lot of the mentorship in science. So she ended up going a non-traditional way, and then she also is starting her own company. So she's much more entrepreneurial. My 19-year-old son is my super social son, who was like, literally, my husband and I used to joke, like, he's going to be our child that gets somebody pregnant when they're in their teens. Like, this is going to be the child. Like, every summer camp he went to, like, we would get calls from the director, he's kissing the girls in the back. Like, it's like, we were like, this is going to be this kid's, like, path, right? Like, we're going to be teenage parents, like, or have a child as a teenage parent. Like, we were like, we gotta, he's so social. And he ended up going into a college degree early. He ended up meeting somebody there, and he's married. He's 19. So he's married, and he ended up dropping out of college and starting his own. He ended up getting his electrician's license, or he's in the middle of that, and he's flipping houses. And he runs on the side a stock market business that he actually started when he was 17, that I had to start for him because you can't actually legally trade stocks till you're 18. And so I had to sign off on every single stock trade that he did practicing. And the moment he turned 18, he started taking clients. And so he runs a stock trading business. So, and he's married, and he is an electrician's license, and he's flipping houses. Like, it's that incredible. Like, and this is like, it was messy. These are the kids that went to the traditional schools. It wasn't working. We had to decondition. Like, it was messy. And it doesn't look like, it does. Now I look back and I'm like, I'm so thankful I did that. But on the way, we were like, what are we doing? Like, how is this even effective? Right. And then, I have clients right now that are in traditional colleges and are thriving and loving it. And then I have clients who are like, nope, we're going a different path. We're going to go more entrepreneurial path, or a trades path, or whatever they're here to do. Like, and that's the thing, like, it also changes over time, right? Like, I believe that we all are here to do something on this earth, but it might take a couple of different paths to lead us there. Like, I really believe that I am here to share what intuitive unschooling is, but I spent over 20 years in a traditional schooling environment, teaching as a teacher and as an administrator. I was the one who was like, you got to take these many AP classes to get into this university, which is a crock of shit, by the way. But I used to teach that because that's what I thought, right? Until I realized that actually you don't. And these wonderful universities, like, are going to accept these amazing kids without that. In fact, it's oftentimes easier because they have such a great story if they want to go to university. I always talk about that because parents, sometimes that's the litmus test, is like, can my child actually go to university, right? So I like, yeah, they can. Will they want to? That I can't guarantee. But could they? Yes. If that was their desire, if they wanted to, they could. But they don't necessarily have to, because it's not necessarily the path. And especially in this global world that we live in this day and age, it's not, you're right. Schooling is meant to lead into corporate world, and that's not necessarily what we need, right? But on some level, if it is the person's desire to go that way, or maybe if it's part of their path, like you know, I don't know what your stories are, but maybe you were in corporate for a while, or maybe you're still in corporate, or you have, partners or family members who are. It's not like there's no place for that. Of course there is. But it's like, how do we approach it? Are we giving our souls to that life, or are we using it so that it helps us achieve what we're here to do? And I think that that's the difference. It's like, is it coming from the outside prescribed in, which is school, corporate, all of that, or is it me navigating the system to bring to the world what I'm here to do? And that's the difference to me. And that's the whole point of all of this.
I love it. I seriously love it. It's brilliant. Can I just share a little bit of what is going on with my three kids? So I'm French, and when we moved here in Malaysia, we knew that we had to pay for the school fees, because this is here, it's not a country where it's free, even less, even more for foreigner. And when I arrived here, compared to France, there were lots of Montessori kindergarten. And of course, it's popular. It becomes even more popular. And I send my kids, my three kids, in the Montessori kindergarten. So I want to understand if this is something that you recommend. Is this something part of your institute as well, recommending this kind of teaching?
I love the Montessori method. When it's done at the younger ages, it truly is intuitive unschooling, because in the Montessori method, the classroom is set up with experiences that you can go towards, right? And you go and you take out, this modality, and you work on the blocks in this pattern, and then you do this one. Oops, my light. Sorry, you're gonna have to edit that out. Like the Montessori method, the way the classrooms are set up is it leads towards teaching children how to self-guide. So I love Montessori in that. The thing about Montessori is that it's not extended into the higher grades. I know Montessori can go up through usually around 8th grade or pre-high school, depending upon, of course, what the school system is like in which country, but it can extend. But eventually it morphs into, well, you need this much math, this much reading, this much this. And so it stops becoming self-directed like it is in the younger years in Montessori, and it starts to change. My kids actually went to a Montessori school. The longest school that they went to was actually a Montessori school. And the reason why it worked is because of that. But once they started transitioning to more traditional subjects, even at the Montessori school, in the traditional teaching modalities, where it started being, here's what you have to learn by a certain time, and here's the project or the test, it started to really not work for them. And by not work, it's not that they weren't having some success, but they were starting to have a lot more worry, a lot more stress, a lot more anxiety. So I always remind parents, school is not supposed to be stressful. That doesn't mean that there aren't challenging times when you have to do something and push through it. Just like as humans, we have challenges and we triumph when we work through them, right? It's not about that, but it's like, if every day is stressful, or most days are stressful, or there's not a lot of joy, or your child doesn't want to get up in the morning to go, that's a problem. We need to see that as the problem. And the solution isn't, let's just give them incentives to go. The solution is, maybe this whole scenario isn't working, right? And we need to look outside the box. But in terms of the Montessori, at its core and its purity, it's actually so beautiful. And I think really actually laid the foundation for my kids. Because we didn't know how to do this intuitive unschooling in the beginning, we're these traditional educators. We all went to school, we were just doing the thing, I really am so thankful that we intuitively actually were guided to put our kids in a Montessori school for so long, because it really did lay that beautiful foundation. I think if we could extend the Montessori way and the methods be much beyond the first few years, truly, I think it would be beautiful.
I agree. I agree that we need to find a way. And that's probably what Cambria Institute is doing. We have a French researcher. She has tried to continue the work of Maria Montessori. I'm not sure if you heard about her, but she wrote an amazing book. Her name is Céline Alvarez. And she is very popular because she has run research in the kindergarten in France. And her principle is that to keep all Maria Montessori principle, and same activities and stuff like that, except that she is mixing ages. And that's where something I was so grateful to have 3 kids, because yes, the first is slightly more complicated for him to have been possibly, ask questions here and there, but luckily he did on his own. But then when I see how, the second and the third grew, having the big brothers, and then being able to show example and follow. And then I keep asking, the big one to teach the little one, because this is also how they imprint, what they have learned, so like this, and he teach them as well, their way of, explaining things. So this is how I'm doing it. And this is from the book that she wrote. I can't remember the name of the book, but I love the fact of mixing ages, because it has purpose for both age. The little one to really learn something with simple words, and while it consolidate the learning for the eldest one, and I love this principle. I really like it. So sorry, it was just a comment like this, but
it's so beautiful. I love it too. At Cambria, everything that I do is mixed age, so we do it as families, so it's all sorts of ages. The other movement that's really becoming popular in the US, but I think it's also becoming popular in other parts of the world, is the micro school movement. I don't know if it's something that's popular where you are, but this idea of these very small mixed age schooling environments that are like, it's not intuitive unschooling, but it's learning in a way that, because it's so small, and it's not really how small it is, but it's also the attention that each of the children are given in these micro schools, that it allows for them to develop more optimally. In my opinion, they do a much better job than traditional schooling. So I always recommend, if you're going to send your kid to traditional school, but you have an option for a micro school, do that. If you're going to intuitively unschool and you're ready for that, do that. But it's a jump. It's a leap to go from traditional school to intuitively unschooling, right? So give yourself a time to kind of explore it along the way and look at other modalities. Like when you were talking about Montessori, it reminded me of the micro school movement. It's, and there's different styles of them. There's one in Minnesota in the United States called Awakening Spirit School. And the way that the director of that school is phenomenal. I recommend people, if you live in Minnesota, which I don't live anywhere near Minnesota, if you live in Minnesota, look up Awakening Spirit School, because it's phenomenal. I recommend it. And part of it is the way in which the director runs it, but it's small. And anyway, it's not intuitive unschooling, which I am an advocate for, because of who it brings us into as our soul path. And I think that's incredibly important. But I also recognize that it's not something that people can leap to right away. It takes this deconditioning ourselves. So you want to put your child in an environment where it's most aligned as possible, given your given moment, right? Do the thing that's most aligned for your child. And if, and allow yourself to take the steps. So.
Okay, I have another question, which I think it can be a worry, because it could be my worry, to be honest. Socializing.
Yes.
So this is something that at first I wanted to put my kids quite early at school, to teach them, being surrounded by other kids and behaving, on their way, because it was Montessori anyway. So, but it was, learning about living in society, and if I were to make the choice of unschooling my kids, they would probably hate me for the first month, because after a week of holidays, they are like, I'm bored, I want to go back to school, I want to see my friend. They always want to be surrounded with their friends. So how do you manage that with your clients? How do you approach that socializing aspect?
That's actually one of the reasons why I at Cambria, I have a Cambria, it's called the Cambria Curated Community. It's unschooling in community. So we travel together. Next year, we're going on a trip to Egypt together. We've done local, I'm based in Los Angeles in the US primarily. I have clients from all over, but that's kind of like our home base. So we've done other things. During the pandemic, it was trickier. We had to be a lot more creative with what we did online, as did everybody. But now that we're traveling more, doing things together, because when you travel together and you have an experience with other peers who are also doing this like you are, you become friends that those connections then totally extend into the rest of your life. So I mentioned I have a lot of clients in the Los Angeles area. Actually, right now tonight, because for us it's 9:07, I have about 10 of them are all meeting for boba and their parents. So it's so funny. Like even their parents are all now friends with each other. So it's like this: their parents come and then they stay and hang out with each other, and then all of their kids are over there, and their connections are really deep because of they're all doing this thing together. They're all doing this intuitive unschooling together. Even though they're all on different learning paths because they're all unique individuals, they're not taking class together or not doing that, but because they have these bonds because of the community, that was my answer to that socially, was I wanted to provide that. So I provide that as part of the Cambria Creative Community. But before I had Cambria, for my own children, like I was mentioning with my youngest son, he was so social. We actually had to get involved in a whole bunch of different activities for him because he needed that social outlet. So he was doing like, chess stuff because he was really into chess for a while. Then he dropped that. But, he did chess stuff and he was like, had all his friends. And then, we in Los Angeles, depending upon where you are in the world, there's a really huge homeschooling community. In fact, in Los Angeles, one of the largest homeschooling communities was actually started by Billie Eilish's mom. Do you guys know who Billie Eilish is, the singer? So like unschooling is really popular in LA. So fortunately, like there were a lot of opportunities to do things socially with other people who were homeschooling. So when we were intuitively unschooling, we still had events and activities we could go to and they could connect. But I just want to this is one of the most common questions and honestly, it was our fear too. Like if we take our kids out of school, are they going to just like not know how to interact? It is a real fear. It is a true real fear. But I actually in my experience, it never turns out that way. But actually I want to turn the lens back on like, where in life are we only socializing with people our own age? Only in school, unless you have a multi-age classrooms, which are brilliant, but really only in school. And it's artificial. Even in our work environments, we have people of all different ages, right? My clients are all different ages, it's an artificial construct to begin with that our children need to socialize with their same age peers. In fact, it's only been truly like around in like officially for a little over 100 years. So if we think about that, it's what we know, right? It's what we've experienced, what our parents have experienced, what our, maybe our grandparents have experienced. Although my grandmother was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse in Pennsylvania and had a multi-age. She had kids from like 5 all the way till 18, So that was a different thing, and that was only in my grandmother's age. But really, I'd like to turn the lens back on like, we think that that's how they socialize, but it's actually not. Our kids socialize with all people of different ages, and to provide them that opportunity is really actual true socialization. Being able to learn how to talk to adults, how to talk to older kids, how to interact with younger kids. Sarah, it's like you mentioned, what you love about the Montessori method, or you love with your children, is how they interact with each other, right? And that's actually more of a true experience of the world. If we take out the construct of school, or the idea that school has to be same age peers, that's something we created, not actually based even on good science, truly. It was more because it was a way of managing children, and lots of them, but it wasn't because it was good for them. So it's actually a fear based in something that actually isn't healthy to begin with. And so when we do want our kids to socialize, we do want them to have friends, we do want them to know how to healthfully interact with people, it's to actually have them be interacting with people of multiple ages, and to provide, find, and seek out environments that do that is actually more beneficial to our kids. And especially if you have any kids who are neurodivergent in any way, they tend to actually socialize better with adults maybe, or older children, or younger children, but very rarely their same age. Not always, but with neurodivergent kids, I work a lot with the gifted population, and that tends to be the case.
So I just want to ask about the type of families that this attracts, because it sounds like you would have to be very progressive, but you would also have to have the actual environment to do this in terms of being at home, being able to be so in, like you couldn't have a traditional job. I mean, I know you said that you did at the beginning and therefore it had to be your parents, but it has to be somebody. And, you know, like thinking about myself, while my parents are available, you know, to babysit, they're not available to babysit all day long, but
Right.
they also wouldn't, even if they were available to babysit all day long, they wouldn't have the mindset to be able to, they'd be like, there's no way I'm going to look after your 12-year-old kid while he lies on my couch all day. You know, you're a shit parent.
Yeah.
Like you don't, like you can only attract a certain crowd, is that right? You know,
Yeah.
definitely from a socioeconomic perspective. I mean, you're in LA, do you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know if you could start this business in Texas.
You know, that's like it is fascinating. I do have clients actually from kind of all over, but I will tell you, and clients internationally, I will tell you the main driver is that it's no longer working for my child and I'm desperate. I need something else for my child to thrive. That is the main
Oh, so it's
common
the last
denominator.
option.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like I've tried everything else and now and this is why I mentioned the kids who tend the parents who tend to end up coming to Cambria and the kids who are coming here, it's a last option in the sense that like I'm no
Oh.
longer willing for my child to suffer, and the suffering looks different, right? Like sometimes it's like they're just not happy, and sometimes it's they're very depressed, or sometimes it's they just don't want to go to school. You know, like school refusal. Like there are lots of kids who are like, I just don't want to go to school. And in every single case, and this is why they're drawn to me and they eventually find me, it's because their child, they can tell that their child is desiring something different, and their desires are very different than what they're getting at school. And so there's no alignment. And these parents are like, what do I do with my child? I was able to play the game and get through school myself. Why can't my child? But my child cannot. And I think it's because we are living in a new age, like a different generation of kids, and the souls that are being born today are no longer tolerant of what we are putting them through. And so we're hitting this wall. My clients are from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. The ones who are in LA, believe it or not, are from a variety, but they all are in a place where somehow they're able to make this work. And the pandemic actually helped with that because a lot of people started being able to work from home in ways that they couldn't in the past, right? And have been able to continue that. Or now their kids are old enough to be at home by themselves. So that kind of happens. But I also have parents that are like, I want to be a support to my child, but I don't want to do any of the actual, like, I'm not the mentor, right? They're self-guided, but I need to find all these other mentors. And there are ways to find mentors where you have to pay for it, and ways to find mentors where people will donate their time. Like my husband and I were both teachers. We were barely scraping by living in LA, like barely. Like we could barely like make it, you know, and we had moved multiple times to try and get our kids into school. So you add that to it. And then because of our kids' journey, we actually both became entrepreneurs, and I started my company, and now we can very much afford to live in LA. So, you know, it was part of our path too. Like I often say, like the parents will say to me, yeah, it was my path too, that I ended up with this, or that this happened to my child and I had to make a change in what I was doing. And like, it's all part of our journey. Right. And so if I'm looking at like, who's my market, I used to think it was a certain profile of family who I anticipated would come, but actually that's not what I ended up getting. I ended up getting families who were like, I'm so attracted to your message. I'm so drawn to intuition and intuitive unschooling. I don't even know why, because I feel like I'm crazy even thinking this, but please teach me how to do this. And things aren't working for my child where they are, and I really want them to be happy. So that's really kind of where it starts.
Wow. So can I ask a super selfish question then?
Of
How do we
course.
tap into our intuition? Like even just me, myself, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, that seems to be your specialty.
Yeah. Um, so I consider, like, I didn't realize that this was going to be like my kind of thing. It took me a while to figure out that I'm actually really good at like, how do you practically live out your intuition? How do you
Yeah.
trust what's coming through? And it turns out that that's actually like something I was really good at in my life, but I didn't even realize that like not everybody else did that. A lot of people, when they talk about intuition, it's like that gut reaction for the big things, right? Or like a general guide. But the way that I've always understood intuition, since I really tapped into myself, is no, what do I do in this moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment? I'm literally feeling in physically to what's happening in my body and listening in like, what is next? In the practical, in the like, what am I going to make? I never make dinner, by the way. I just intuitively, I figured out I am not into cooking at all. So interestingly enough, my oldest daughter cooks all the time, not because she has to, but because she likes to. And when she doesn't want to, we order out. But you know, like, what am I going to do in this moment? Like, what am I going to do about the laundry? What am I going to do about this chore? What am I going to do about this thing in my business? What am I going to do with my daughter? What are we going to do for her YouTube channel? Like every moment is a lived intuitive moment. And so the way that you start tapping into it is start actually living your life, not what am I supposed to do today? What does my to-do list say today? But what am I guided to do today? Like our intuition is our GPS system, and it's not meant to be just for the big things. And we're supposed to handle the small things. You know, it's meant to guide every moment of our lives. So the way that I teach tapping in, I mean, there's like a whole system to it, but the way that I do it is how do we live moment to moment in our days and practice doing that until we can really start feeling what our intuition is telling us. Because at first, if we're not used to it, we like second guess everything. This is how I'm feeling, but that's not reasonable. You know, that's silly. Why would I do that? Okay, wait, hold on a minute. Why? Let me go back to what I was really desiring in that moment. And let me trust that that's the next step. And then I go the next step. And then I go the next step. And then I go the next step. So it's actually in the practical lived moments of every day that I start and I teach from, because that's how you truly tap in. And it is hard at first for some people, easier for others, hard at first for some people. My husband and I laugh because he used to think I was crazy. He used to say, you do this, fine, but I don't buy it. You know, that, you know, we're doing this for our kids because they're doing better, they're thriving, but like this whole thing. And now he's the one that is saying to me every day, have you really felt into this decision? I can feel your energy is off. Like he's like completely living this way now too. It has become like the way of our family, like, and the way that we teach. So I teach practically tapping in by starting with the practical, like everyday moments of your life. And then you start to get so good at telling what is your intuition coming through? What are you being led to? What are you being guided to? Versus what is the mental chatter? What is the fear that's coming through? It's, you know, it's a lot of mindset work, but it's applied to practical everyday living, not just generally. And that's what I found to be the best way to do it. And it looks a little different for everybody, but it's the practical everyday stuff.
I'm into intuition as well. And I mean, things happened in my life and I disconnected from my intuition for a while, and now I'm working, you know, on this reconnection and make sure that I know what my body is telling me. And Angela keeps telling me, listen to your gut, this is how you're meant to be doing a decision. And that's the whole point, is that reconnecting and knowing your body, you know, good enough to know when it's a yes and when it's a no. And you may have heard about the muscle testing. I know not everyone in the audience know what muscle testing is, and we're probably going to make a short episode about it eventually. But I was teaching this to my kids recently, and it's funny because I resonated with all what you said. You know, we don't need a certification to prove that we know something about a topic. We don't need a certification. The certification is just a paper. And that's funny because recently I've learned something through a book where it's so well described that I don't see why I would go for a certification. And along this teaching, there were muscle testing. And sometimes I can notice my eldest is a people pleasing already. He's only 7 years old, but damn. And he knows that. So I keep showing him when he's doing it, you know, when he's people pleasing, and most of the time he's trying to please me. And I keep telling him, that's not what I want. I want you to do what you want. But he does not know how to tap into it. Right. So I decided to teach them, you know, muscle testing. and Dame, he was good at it. I mean, the eldest. The second
I
one was
love it.
slightly too young, slightly too young to know about it because he was laughing about it more than, being serious about it. But the
Right.
first one, he could seriously feel his body. And I said, this is it. This is
Yeah.
what you should feel. So I'm trying sometimes to get this kind of learning. But because the thing is that by teaching them, you know, they feel something and then they try to feed back to me what they feel, and that
Yeah.
something teaches me something that I may have missed in my own body as well.
Yeah.
So this is where I progress, and this is it's a small pieces of probably what you're teaching and what you're guiding. More than teaching, you don't teach anything, but you're guiding people through a new way of life. I love it. Seriously, thank you very much for having shared all of this. Angela, do you have any other question? I have thousands again, but
Yeah, no, poor Cam have just spoken, for a long time. So,
exactly.
yeah, anything else I will ask privately. Yeah, so thank you so much, Cam. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your wisdom. And your and your new perspective. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share about it. It's just, as you can tell, it excites me so much, and I love talking about it, and I just feel so grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure that for now, for at least a week, if not more, then I'm going to be wondering, should I do this or should I do that? There is one more question, just as a bonus. Sorry for keeping you a little bit longer. We are both, working full-time job I'm in corporate. My husband is an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard, right? Because during the day we have to work, we have to fulfill this commitment that we have. So does someone, when you start unschooling your child, does someone needs to give up on that to be full-time with the kids?
Either that or you have to hire somebody who can do it. And depending upon, this is where the question of finances comes in, right? Like hiring somebody who truly knows how to do this, right? And is somebody you trust and somebody you really feel guided towards, right? And then hiring somebody that can work with your children in that way is one way to do it. And it's actually kind of a beautiful way to do it, because then you're bringing in a layer of support to your family. And once you've kind of figured out that that's what you desire and need, if that's the way you go, or a couple of people, sometimes I have people who bring in a couple of different people because of the different personalities and energies of their own children. They like a couple of different people. It becomes an opportunity for you to widen your network instead of getting support at the school, right? Because when we send our kids to school, we're entrusting our kids to the administration and the teachers and the situation and the, district or the school and leadership. It's allowing you to curate that and to bring it into your own home. So it's one way to do it. And a lot of times, when I say that, people are like, oh, but I couldn't do that. It's so expensive, and sometimes it is expensive, but depending on where you're sending your kids to school, it may or may not be more expensive. If you're not paying for school, then it's more expensive. But then you have to take into account the cost of your child maybe not optimally thriving, and what would that look like to bring that in. I have actually found, like, if we're looking at actual practical costs, that doing it this way is less expensive than going a private school route. But not necessarily, obviously, more expensive than a public school route. But then you take into the other costs. To me, it's just a no-brainer. Like, my husband and I went from like both being educators to like having to change our whole lives. But I'm so thankful for it because of where we are now and what it led us down. And actually, even financially, what it's done for us in our lives, it's like we're totally different. I was working for years and years and years, and I was always salary capped. I was never gonna bust out of that, and now I am, because this is actually my soul path, right? Like I always say, I got pregnant with my now 5-year-old, and I was like, it's the best gift. And this is a story for another time, but I didn't know I was pregnant for 5 months. Okay, so think about this. I have 3 other kids. I've been pregnant, had them, knew I was pregnant, like very early on. I was so disconnected from my body. I did not know I was pregnant. It was a wake-up call in my life. I went for my regular, gynecological visit, and she's like, "You're pregnant." I'm like, "What?" Check again. 5 months. My baby was moving. My baby was, and she was thriving and doing well, even though I was so disconnected from my body. It's a miracle, like a genuine miracle. But oh my gosh, right? I was like, okay, I can't keep living this way. I was people pleasing at work. I was a workaholic. I was a school administrator, and I worked from like 7 a.m. to like 9 p.m. Like, it was insane. Like, who does that, right? But I have to do this because it's what's going to get me ahead. I was people pleasing my boss, the teachers. It was a mess. I was so not in myself. I was disconnected from my body, so much to the point I didn't even know I was pregnant. That's where I was like, never again. Like, I'm so thankful for that little girl, because my life has changed because of her. And now I'm totally tapped into my intuition, totally connected to my body, like living the dream, like living my dreams, living my soul purpose. Like, yeah, parents have to change, but it's all in the most beautiful and best of ways, so.
I love it. I love it. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy that you came and you share that with us. Yes, we can definitely see that you are passionate about that. You definitely got me thinking about what is going to happen for my kids and how can I change a few things here and there. I'm not so sure I'm going to be ready yet because I'm not surrounded by an environment here.
Yeah.
It's different. It's different. I'm going to always use excuses anyway. I'm very good at finding excuses anyway. But but I'm conscious about that. Anyway, no, I'm going to think through it. It was very powerful, and seriously, you give people the strong desire to reconnect with their intuition, and you're doing it so passionately, and I love that. Thank you so much for doing such a great work. Can you just tell us where we can find information about your institute, about yourself, where we can find you? And of course, we're going to put all the links in the episodes, but please tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so the website is cambriainstitute.org. And you can find me on social media. On Facebook, I'm Cam Werley-Gonzales. And on Instagram, I'm Cam W. Gonzales. Please reach out. If you just are even like slightly interested, like start learning about it. And trust me, it's okay if it takes multiple steps, right? Like, and you can trust that it'll be in perfect timing, but listen to your intuitive hits. If you're like drawn to this at all, like just follow that and start to like explore it, because you really will never be led in the wrong direction if you start doing that. And that's really what this is all about. It's so fun. So please, reach out to me, follow me. I will love to connect with you online.
It's brilliant. Thank you so much again, Cam. I learned so much during this episode, and I hope that our audience did too. But I'm sure that they're going to love it. I already know where I'm going to share all these episodes.
Yeah, I feel inspired. Like I found that really inspiring and really forward thinking. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so great. I'm so glad. And thank you for having me on. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. And every time you listen, we truly appreciate it. And if you would like to follow me or learn more about my work or get in contact with me, please go to my website, which is angelajanecoaching.com.
And if you want to know more about my work, you can go on sarahmeng.com. All the details are going to be listed in a comment below. You can also follow us on social media, Instagram or Facebook, where we are sharing our daily tips.
Bye.
Hope to see you soon.